When the king of Sodom heard that I had returned from the conquest of Amraphel, son of Nimrod, king of Shinar, he came forth to meet me at the valley of Shavah, which is west of the city of Shalom, which is Jerusalem, where Noah and Melchizedek, which is Shem, dwelt. And Melchizedek brought forth bread and wine from the city of Shalom unto the valley of Shavah, where we were encamped. And he, being the high priest, after the order of the Most High God, brake the bread and blessed it. And he blessed the wine also. And he distributed them unto me and those who were with me, and we partook and were filled. And Melchizedek lifted up his hands to heaven and blessed me, and said, Blessed Abram, thou art a man of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and of earth. Wherefore his name and priesthood should not depart from thee, and thy seed after thee, while the earth shall stand, and even in eternity shall it remain with thee. And blessed is the name of the Most High God, and almighty his power, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And I, Abraham, gave into the hand of Melchizedek tithes of all I had taken. For he was the presiding high priest, after the order of the Most High God, the first of the fathers unto me, and he reigned under his father Noah. And when I had done this, Melchizedek again lifted up his voice and blessed me, saying, Blessed art thou, Abraham, for the Most High God shall visit thee, and shall bestow upon thee riches and honor, and lands for an everlasting possession, because thou hast been true and faithful to the covenants which thou hast entered before him. Wherefore thou shalt continue to increase, worlds without end, and the glory of the Lord shall never depart from thee. The blessings of thy fathers shall rest upon thee, and thou shalt stand at the head, and in thee and in thy seed after thee, those who shall bear thy priesthood, shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Wherewith I departed from Melchizedek, rejoicing in this blessing, for he was a man of faith, who wrought righteousness. And when a child, he feared God, and by his faith he stopped the mouths of lions and quenched the violence of fire, when those of the evil combination sought to destroy him from off the face of the earth. Wherefore, having been approved of God, he was ordained a high priest after the order of the covenant which God made with Enoch, which is after the order of the firstborn, even our father Adam. For this holy order came not by man, nor by will of man, neither by father nor mother, neither by beginning of days nor end of years, but of God. For it was established in the beginning of the earth by the ancients of days. Wherefore it is called the order of the ancient. And it was delivered unto men from the beginning by the calling of God's own voice, according to his own will, through the voice of his priesthood, unto as many as believed on his name and were faithful until they had obtained. Behold, these could transcend the veil according to the will of God, and commune with the general assembly and church of the firstborn in heaven. And many were caught up to be with him, such as Enoch, and all the city of Peleg was caught up with him. For God had sworn unto Enoch and unto his seed with an oath by himself, thee every one being ordained after this order, and calling shall have power by faith to break mountains, to divide the seas, to dry up waters, to turn them out of their course, to put at defense the armies of nations, to divide the earth, to break every band, to stand in the presence of God, to do all things according to his will, according to his command, subdue principalities and powers. And this by the will of the Son of the only begotten of the Father, which was from before the foundation of the world. And men having this faith and coming up unto this order of God should be translated and taken up into heaven. Now Melchizedek was a priest after this order, which is the holy order of God. Therefore he obtained peace in Shalom and was called the Prince of Peace. And his people wrought righteousness and obtained heaven, for they sought for the city of Enoch, which God had taken up, separating it from the earth, having reserved it unto the latter days, or the end of the world. For God hath said and sworn with an oath that the heavens and the earth should come together again, and the sons of God be tried even by fire. And thus Melchizedek, having established righteousness, was called the King of Heaven by his people, or, in other words, the King of Peace. And they communed with those in the city of Enoch and in the city of Peleg, and had access to them, and were blessed in all their days. So this is from the writings of Abraham himself, as we're going to be reading today about how Melchizedek, which is Shem, visited him, and they had communion together. So welcome to the Ancient Book Club. I hope you enjoyed that reading. It was a little lengthy, but it's all very necessary. So for our reading today. So I'm just going to share the screen now, and we're going to get into our portion for today, which is in Genesis 18 to 22. And it's on Abraham so Genesis 18 to 22. Let's read.
To him by the oaks of Mamre, as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, and bowed himself to the earth, and said, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, while I bring a morsel of bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant. So they said, Do as you have said. And Abraham went quickly into the tent to Sarah and said, Quick, 3 seahs of fine flour, knead it and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to a young man who prepared it quickly. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, Where is Sarah, your wife? And he said, She is in the tent. The Lord said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure? The Lord said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh and say, Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. He said, No, but you did laugh.
I just want to pause it there because the three angels was Yahusha, or Jesus, and two other angels. You see, he's always been here. He formed this world. And as I read from the writings of Abraham, um, you know, the only begotten son, they knew him all the way through time. When he came as a baby through Mary, the Virgin Mary, that was another insertion. But he's always been here on this world. So you know, I suppose he can come in and out as he likes. But this was the Lord that was speaking with Abraham. And I think we tend to just glance over this and not really think about that. But it is worth thinking about because, you know, the Holy Spirit has always been here as well. His ways have always been here. In fact, everything, you know, as in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun, which is true. We all just get a turn to be here on this earth. The wicked have always been wicked. The righteous are always righteous. Well, not always, but, you know, there's always righteous on the world. And we just get a turn. This is our turn now to be on this world and to choose who we're going to serve and to choose to have our minds renewed and our lives renewed by him and by his spirit and to overcome ourselves in this world. So this is our turn.
And the men set out from there, and they looked down toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to set them on their way. The Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? For I have chosen him, that he may command his children and his household after him, to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised him." Then the Lord said, "Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. And if not, I will know." So the men turned from there and went toward Sodom. But Abraham still stood before the Lord. Then Abraham drew near and said, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be that from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just?" And the Lord said, "If I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Abraham answered and said, "Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? And he said, "I will not destroy it if I find 45 there." Again he spoke to him and said, "Suppose 40 are found there." He answered, "For the sake of 40 I will not do it." Then he said, "Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there." He answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." He said, "Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there." He answered, "For the sake of 20 I will not destroy it." Then he said, "Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak again, but this once. Suppose 10 are found there." He answered, "For the sake of 10 I will not destroy it." And the Lord went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. The 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way." They said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square." But he pressed them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house. And he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them." Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." But they said, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." Then they pressed hard against the man Lot, and drew near to break the door down. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them, and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out groping for the door. Then the men said to Lot, "Have you anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city, bring them out of the place, for we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, "Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city." But he seemed to his sons-in-law to be jesting. As morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city." But he lingered. So the men seized him and his wife and his 2 daughters by the hand, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. And as they brought them out, one said, "Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away." And Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lords. Behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have shown me great kindness in saving my life. But I cannot escape to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Behold, this city is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my life will be saved." He said to him, "Behold, I grant you this favor also, that I will not overthrow the city of which you have spoken. Escape there quickly, for I can do nothing till you arrive there." Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the valley. And he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace. So it was that when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had lived. Now Lot went up out of Zoar and lived in the hills with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to live in Zoar. So he lived in a cave with his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come in to us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father." So they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she arose. The next day the firstborn said to the younger, "Behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father." So they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. The younger also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ammi. He is the father of the Ammonites to this day. From there Abraham journeyed toward the territory of the Negeb, and lived between Kadesh and Shur. And he sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife. Now Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, Lord, will you kill an innocent people? Did he not himself say to me, She is my sister? And she herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands I have done this. Then God said to him in the dream, Yes, I know that you have done this in the integrity of your heart, and it was I who kept you from sinning against me. Therefore I did not let you touch her. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, so that he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told them all these things. And the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, What have you done to us? And how have I sinned against you that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, What did you see that you did this thing? Abraham said, I did it because I thought, There is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, This is the kindness you must do me. At every place to which we come, say of me, He is my brother. Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male servants and female servants, and gave them to Abraham, and returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before you, dwell where it pleases you. To Sarah he said, Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, and also healed his wife and female slaves, so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife.
Okay, I wasn't going to go into this because it's quite a long reading today, but remember a reading or two previous, similar thing happened when Abraham and Sarah went to Egypt. And remember, it was all the males there that couldn't mate, and it was the cattle that were affected, as well as the men of the land, made the men impotent. So, and through that, they learned the power of God, that Abraham and Sarah's God was the true living God. It wasn't the God of wood and of stone and of everything. You know, they had many gods, and they didn't do anything. But the God of Abraham and Sarah is the living God who created this world. So through that happening, it turned the nation of Egypt into covenant with the Father. And remember, when they left Egypt, they were given many cattle and sustenance, and it made him very rich. This happened again now, but now it's affected the woman. So it's not like it was a small event that just happened for a week. Uh, you know, when you think about that and you think about the length it takes to bear a child, all the different cycles of the woman, this would have been going on for some time. And in turn, they saw the power of the Most High, and he gave 1,000 pieces of silver. So you think of silver today in New Zealand dollars, it's what, 55 cents for a coin. If they were just 1 ounces, these might be more than that. You know, so 1,000 of those, I mean, it's a lot of money. So the point is, this is a pattern, you see, which God said to Abraham to say earlier on, that Jesus said to Abraham, that to say that your brother and sister, they kind of are anyway through their family, but they're also husband and wife. So, and it was to allow the space for God to work in the midst of these people. And that's what's happened here. Everything is for the glory of God. Yeah. So that people can know about him. You see, Abraham was the father of many nations, but the nations were to bear his name, to be the witness, to do the job of going to the nations, to showing the nations the power of God, the love of God, the story of redemption, of the only begotten Son. So, and this is what happened here too. Okay, now we're going to get on to the birth and the sacrifice, or the birth of Isaac and the relationship with Ishmael, and then the chapter ends with the famous scene of Isaac being the Passover lamb.
The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot, for she said, let me not look on the death of the child. And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, or I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. At that time Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore, swear to me here by God, that you will not deal falsely with me or with my descendants or with my posterity, but as I have dealt kindly with you, so you will deal with me and with the land where you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. When Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized, Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, and I have not heard of it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock apart, and Abimelech said to Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs that you have set apart? He said, these 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that this may be a witness for me that I dug this well. Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because there both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you.
Now, just to give a little bit of context to this, let me just read a little bit here. And it's Isaac and Ishmael contended, and Ishmael said, It is right that I should inherit what is the father's, because I am his firstborn son. And Isaac said, okay, so just a little bit of context on the context. Ishmael and Hagar were sent away to live elsewhere. Abraham loved Hagar. She was the daughter of the Pharaoh in last reading. And she was righteous. She wanted to follow the ways of the ancients. So she went with Abraham. The Pharaoh gave Abraham and Sarah Hagar as a gift to help Sarah to be the handmaid and to learn and to be part of their family. So they spent many years together, obviously, and they had Ishmael. Now, Ishmael actually had quite a streak in him, and that's why they sent him away, because he tried to take out little Isaac. There's a lot to the story. So they had to be separated, but they were always still in contact. Every year, Abraham would visit Hagar and Ishmael, and he was very involved in Ishmael's life. And this is an example. They were together here later on because they were brothers. And just another interesting fact, when Sarah died, Abraham remarried Hagar. He went back to her and had like 20 children. It's amazing. So she must have been quite a young girl when she went to live with them. So let's just keep reading. So Isaac and Ishmael contended, and Ishmael said, It is right that I should inherit my father's, what is my father's, because I am his firstborn. And Isaac said, It is right that I should inherit what is the father's, because I am the son of Sarah, his wife, and thou art the son of Hagar, the handmaid of my mother. Ishmael answered and said, I am more righteous than thou, because I was circumcised at 13 years. And if it had been my will to hinder, they should not have delivered me to be circumcised, but thou was circumcised as a child of 8 days. If thou hast had knowledge, perhaps they should not have delivered thee to be circumcised. And Isaac responded and said, Behold, now today I am 36 years old. And if the Holy One, blessed be he, were to require all my members, I would not delay. These words were heard before the Lord of the world. And the word of the Lord at once tried Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, it is me. And it was after these things that the Lord tried Abraham with the 10th trial, and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, it is me. Now take thy son, whom thy love, into the land of worship, which is Jerusalem, and offer him there a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell you, which was Mount Moriah. So this is what happened. Isaac brought it upon himself because of the words that he spoke out of pride. So we all think Abraham was tested, and yeah, he was severely, but so was Isaac. So let's keep going.
So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. He said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram, caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, The Lord Will Provide. As it is said to this day, On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven, and said, By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham lived at Beersheba. Now after these things it was told to Abraham, Behold, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor, Uz his firstborn, Buz his brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Hesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel fathered Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Reumah, bore Tebah, Gaham, Tahash, and Maacah.
Okay, so that's the end of the reading for this week. But I just want to just give you a little bit more context. That where this happened was oh, here we go. And they came to the place which the Lord had told him, and Abraham builded there the altar which Adam had built, which had been destroyed by the waters of the deluge, which Noah had again builded, and which had been destroyed in the age of divisions. And he set the wood in order upon it, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him upon the altar of the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hand, and he took his to slay his son. And Isaac answered and said to him, Bind me properly, lest I tremble from the affliction of my soul, and be cast into the pit of destruction, and there be found profaneness in thy offering. Now the eyes of Abraham looked on the eyes of Isaac, but the eyes of Isaac looked towards the angels on high, and Isaac beheld them, but Abraham saw them not. And the angels answered on high, Come, behold, how the solitary ones who are in the world kill the one the other. He who slayeth delays not. He who is to be slain reaches forth his neck. And the angel of the Lord called to him from the heavens and said, Abraham, neither do him any evil, for now is manifest before me that thou fearest the Lord, neither hast thou withheld thy son, the only begotten, from me. And Abraham lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, a certain ram, which had been created between the evenings of the foundation of the world, was held in the entanglement of a tree by his thorns. Now, between the evenings, we all know, those that do the Passover sacrifice, which is what this was, that it is between the evenings. It is something that you do on the 10th of Nisan. Oh, sorry, the 14th of Nisan. On the 10th of Nisan, you choose the lamb. On the 14th of Nisan, between the evenings, it's the end of the 14th day and the beginning of the 15th. And so this is when that lamb was chosen, had been created between the evenings of the foundation of the world. And Abraham took him. In another book that I've got, it talks about how Isaac's eyes were dimmed by looking up, and how he saw the heavens open, and he saw Yahweh on his throne, and the angels, and he saw it, and it affected his eyesight. So from that time on, his eyesight was very poor. And we read that as we read into his children, and how his vision wasn't very good. Yeah. Okay, 2 Kings for chapter 4, verse 1 to 37. Let's see what this says.
Now the wife of one of the sons of the prophets cried to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, that the creditor has come to take my 2 children to be his slaves." And Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what have you in the house?" And she said, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil." Then he said, "Go outside, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels, and not too few. Then go in and shut the door behind yourself and your sons, and pour into all these vessels. And when one is full, set it aside." So she went from him, and shut the door behind herself and her sons. And as she poured, they brought the vessels to her. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." And he said to her, "There is not another." Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on the rest." One day Elisha went on to Shunem, where a wealthy woman lived, who urged him to eat some food. So whenever he passed that way, he would turn in there to eat food. And she said to her husband, "Behold now, I know that this is a holy man of God who is continually passing our way. Let us make a small room on the roof with walls, and put there for him a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, so that whenever he comes to us, he can go in there." One day he came there, and he turned into the chamber and rested there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, "Call this Shunammite." When he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, "Say now to her, see, you have taken all this trouble for us. What is to be done for you? Would you have a word spoken on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army?" She answered, "I dwell among my own people." And he said, "What then is to be done for her?" Gehazi answered, "Well, she has no son, and her husband is old." He said, "Call her." And when he had called her, she stood in the doorway. And he said, "At this season, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son." And she said, "No, my lord, O man of God, do not lie to your servant." But the woman conceived, and she bore a son about that time the following spring, as Elisha had said to her. When the child had grown, he went out one day to his father among the reapers. And he said to his father, "Oh, my head, my head." The father said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." And when he had lifted him and brought him to his mother, the child sat on her lap till noon, and then he died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door behind him, and went out. Then she called to her husband, and said, "Send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, that I may quickly go to the man of God and come back again." And he said, "Why will you go to him today? It is neither a new moon nor Sabbath." She said, "All is well." Then she saddled the donkey, and she said to her servant, "Urge the animal on. Do not slacken the pace for me unless I tell you." So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her coming, he said to Gehazi his servant, "Look, there is the Shunammite. Run at once to meet her, and say to her, 'Is all well with you? Is all well with your husband? Is all well with the child?'" And she answered, "All is well." And And when she came to the mountain to the man of God, she caught hold of his feet. And Gehazi came to push her away, but the man of God said, Leave her alone, for she is in bitter distress, and the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me. Then she said, Did I ask my Lord for a son? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? He said to Gehazi, Tie up your garment and take my staff in your hand and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him, and if anyone greets you, do not reply, and lay my staff on the face of the child. Then the mother of the child said, As the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. So he arose and followed her. Gehazi went on ahead and laid the staff on the face of the child, but there was no sound or sign of life. Therefore he returned to meet him and told him, The child is not awakened. When Elisha came into the house, he saw the child lying dead on his bed. So he went in and shut the door behind the two of them and prayed to the Lord. Then he went up and lay on the child, putting his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And as he stretched himself upon him, the flesh of the child became warm. Then he got up again and walked once back and forth in the house, and went up and stretched himself upon him. The child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. Then he summoned Gehazi and said, Call this Shunammite. So he called her, and when she came to him, he said, Pick up your son. She came and fell at his feet, bowing to the ground. Then she picked up her son and went out.
Wow. Wow. So that's similar like to Isaac, isn't it? You know, not meant to have had the child, the old in years, but then, you know, the child wasn't departed from them, it came back. There's a lot in this, even with that reading that I said at the very beginning, which I actually realized was from last time's reading. But it's the order of the ancients. They knew these things, and they knew, you know, who was at Mount Carmel. So, you know, the land of Jerusalem, even though at the moment it is being trampled down by the Gentiles, because righteous people wouldn't like murder innocent people like in Gaza and Lebanon. We know that. It has been trampled on. But it has been a place of absolute sacredness where the order of the ancient lived and could be found there. And it's going to come back. When the Lord returns, he will reinstitute things again. As it says in Isaiah and Ezekiel that, you know, we'll have to go up there for 3 feasts of the year. And if we don't, the leaders of those nations, if they don't turn up, they won't get rain for that year. So his kingdom is coming. It is coming. Yeah. Okay, let's read Luke 17.
Likewise, just as it was in the days of Lot, they were eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building. But on the day when Lot went out from Sodom, fire and sulfur rained from heaven and destroyed them all. So will it be on the day when the Son of Man is revealed. On that day, let the one who is on the housetop, with his goods in the house, not come down to take them away, and likewise let the one who is in the field not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever seeks to preserve his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life will keep it. I tell you, in that night there will be 2 in one bed. One will be taken and the other left. There will be 2 women grinding together. One will be taken and the other left. And they said to him, Where, Lord? He said to them, Where the corpse is, there the vultures will gather.
Yeah. Just like in the days of Lot, they were eating and drinking, buying and selling. You know, and it also says, just like the days of Noah, you know, with great debauchery and you know, the seed lines were all genetically altered. So we must keep our temple, our bodies pure and clean. and check what we're eating, make sure it's clean and meant to be food for us. Well, I hope you enjoyed this reading today. Yeah. I'm going to be finishing off the Torah portions, any gaps that I've had from Genesis through to Leviticus. And then I'm going to actually continue on with the Leviticus and finish the whole Torah portions, because I want to go a different direction with my YouTube channel. So I'll talk more about that in the future, but I'm going to go back. I'm just going to fill in some gaps, and then I'm going to go back and complete from Leviticus onwards, so I've got a full set of the Torah portions. So praise be his name. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I pray that the Lord will be with us all this week as he makes our crooked path straight. Have a good week, everybody. Bless you all. Shabbat shalom.